Welcome to Saulcast. Tonight we're talking about Season 5, Episode 10 of Better Call Saul, titled Something Unforgivable. Which, by the way, this was the Season 5 finale, Adam.
Wait, really?
That's right.
Oh, God.
Before we jump into it, I'm Gil, here with my brother Adam.
Hello.
And my tech guy / brother, Alun.
Yo.
And quick reminder, if you haven't done so already, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and, of course, the bell icon, Adam, so you get notified the next time we go live. Let's jump into this episode. We'll start with the Jimmy and Kim storyline, and then check in on Nacho, Lalo, Gus, etc. So we pick up with Jimmy and Kim right where we last left them. Remember that whole scene where Lalo came in, sort of intimidated the two of them?
Yeah, and he kept asking Saul to repeat the story over and over again.
Right, that's right. Well, he leaves. They check the windows. They check the peephole. They make sure he's really gone. Then Kim asks Saul who was on the phone, and Saul admits, that's the guy who saved my life. And then finally tells her the truth of what happened in the desert. Now, like always, we're waiting with bated breath to see what Kim's reaction will be to all this. She hugs Jimmy. And looking back at this scene, I kept trying to read what is on Kim's face. I was looking for disappointment. I was looking for, Saul, how could you have gotten us into this? Mainly what I think I saw was concern.
That's the exact word. I was expecting you to say, Adam, what do you think she was feeling? And I was going to say concern.
That's right. That's right. And I think that was, I think that was genuine. But of course it was genuine. I was waiting, though. Was she going to blow up at him? Was she going to yell at him? And none of that. Basically, Saul suggests they should get out of there and go find somewhere to hide out. They go to a fancy hotel, and this is where we see an introspective Jimmy. He sits on the bed and he asks, am I bad for you? Everything that happened tonight was because of me. Kim says, you crossed the line. You're not going to do it again, right? And Jimmy says, yeah. Adam, is Jimmy telling the truth?
I mean, we literally know what he does in his future, and he definitely does this kind of stuff again. So,
but he believes, when he says yeah, he already knows he's not telling her the truth.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
the way he says it is like, yeah.
And does she believe him?
I don't think so. She looks like she's rationalizing to herself, right?
Well, I would say that she does believe him. That's part of the rationalization. I've been trying to understand the Kim character, I mean, all season, but especially after this finale. And my current working theory is that one of her biggest character flaws is that she lies to herself. And I think this is one of the biggest examples of that, is that she is telling herself that Jimmy crossed the line. He put them in physical danger. They're still in physical danger, but he's not going to do it again. Saul knows he will. He's maybe stopped lying to himself if he ever was, but I think Kim is still lying to herself. By the way, in the chat, Lapcat20 has joined and says, hello, guys. Hello, Lapcat20. Thanks for joining. The next morning, Kim is up early. She's getting dressed for work. Jimmy pushes pretty hard to get her to stay in the hotel. He suggests, why don't we check out the all-day spa? And just starts throwing different amenities at her. She finally calls him out and says, are you hiding something? Why are you trying so hard to get me to stay? Jimmy admits that he's afraid of Lalo. Lalo's leaving the country, but he can make a phone call and send somebody after them easily.
So in this scene, I wasn't sure if Kim was serious or if she was kind of bluffing to try to get Saul to... I bet at the time I thought she had a feeling, he's not telling me the full truth. Maybe if I put him in a position where he's forced to tell me more information, then he will. But it turns out Kim legitimately wanted to go to work, which surprised me.
Which could also be another element of her lying to herself. She almost doesn't want to admit the extent of the danger they're in. She throws out those justifications. I'm just going down the street. Sounds like our dad trying to convince us it's okay for him to leave during the lockdown, during the quarantine. So I think that might be an element of her lying to herself. We do know that she takes the threat seriously. Later, once she learns that Lalo is no longer a threat, at least they think he's no longer a threat, there's genuine relief on her face.
Yeah.
Mr. Weeping Dalek in the chat says, hello there. And Nick Leo asks, are there early examples of Kim lying to herself? I have to think about that, but for sure we've seen examples. I think every time Kim decides to stay with Jimmy, that's her lying to herself. Her thinking that the two of them getting married will be this magic bullet that solves their problem, I think is her lying to
Mhm.
herself. But we've got to go back and think about that some more. But I do think, I mean, I'm repeating myself, but her staying with Jimmy is one big lie. I
Right.
think.
Or even pursuing a career in these higher level corporate legal settings is a form of her lying to herself, I think.
Right. She wants to work in pro bono. She wants to help people who are in need. And she's denied that to herself,
Mhm.
right? Going after the Mesa Verde. That's going to make me happy. And ultimately, it didn't. Kim goes to work. Jimmy is alone in the hotel room. He calls Mike and he demands answers. He wants to know what's the next move? What's going on? Am I in danger? And the impression we get is that Mike is giving him basically nothing, hangs up on him. And I think Saul, more than anybody, is the type of person who would not let this go.
Definitely.
If it was Walt calling, I don't know that the next scene would be Walt slamming on the door trying to get Mike's attention. Mr. Weeping Dalek asks, do you think at this point Jimmy is comfortable with suggesting murdering people? I think he's probably comfortable suggesting murdering some people.
Yeah.
Right? He would probably would be okay with murdering Lalo and Lalo-esque folks. But a Fred Whalen, I don't think he'd be okay with.
I think he's not there yet, but I think there will come a point where he really understands what it means to either be in the game or not in the game, and I think he'll see anyone in the game as fair game. Right?
Exactly. I think part of the tragedy of this show is that, unlike Breaking Bad, where Walt turns into this awful human being, this show feels to me more like Jimmy has a heart. He always has a heart. He's on this trajectory into becoming the Saul Goodman evil persona, but inside there is this good guy that's gotten into this moral gray area, but I don't know that he ever fully becomes evil. You know what I
Inside
mean?
him, there's a good man.
Yeah, exactly. Kim goes to court and bumps into comedian Roy Wood Jr.,
Yeah.
who is playing the character Grant, a public defender. Kim wants more cases to work on. He offers her felonies. She asks for 20 of them. They go down to the worst room, one of the worst rooms I've ever seen. You've got,
It's got
wires.
the flickering fluorescent lights.
That's right. It's got the same electric buzz we heard at Saul and Kim's wedding. It's full of boxes and boxes of pending cases.
Mhm.
Grant introduces them saying assault over here, possession over here, or if you really do want, and then he points at his heart and says juveniles over here. Because he's basically calling out that Kim wants something that's really going to pull at her heartstrings. There's an interesting scene. Better Call Saul uses the score pretty sparingly.
Yeah.
So when you hear it cut in, you know they're trying to tell you something. Here, the music was pretty sad, I thought. And Adam, we were talking about this before we started recording. What do you read into the sort of sad score we hear, the melancholy score we hear over this scene?
I think she feels genuine passion for all the many people that these boxes represent, all the people who don't have legal assistance and who are facing lots of problems with the law, some of whom need someone like Kim to come help them. I think it really does pull on her sense of ethics.
Right. This would be the equivalent of Kim. Here is a room full of people that have needed your help for years, and you haven't been helping them. I don't know if this is me adding something into the scene that isn't there, but I also felt some sadness at the fact that Kim is basically seeing in front of her what is her life's calling, helping these people. And I imagine that ultimately things aren't going to work out for her. So it's almost tragic that she is at the precipice of doing what she loves, and I'm sort of assuming things aren't going to work out well for her. I could be wrong, but it feels like she's making some poor choices. If she does go ahead and try to destroy Howard's life, again, I'm just assuming it's going to blow up in her face if she keeps going down the bad road that Saul assures her she's on.
Bad choice road, yeah.
Bad choice road, that's right. MVP Farms admin says, Saul would lie even if the truth sounded better. Jimmy, not so much, especially to Kim. It is possible that whatever happens to Kim, if she ends up no longer in Saul's life after this show, that could be one big step in breaking some of the sympathy, some of the emotion that Saul has. I definitely don't think his transformation is over yet. So we were speculating a bunch before the finale. What role is Howard going to play? And as soon as he popped up on screen, I got excited. I was so curious what they were going to do with him. Kim bumps into him on the elevator. He introduces her to his associates. Then he pulls her aside, and he gives her a little pep talk. He says, before you make any big life changes, there's something about Jimmy you ought to hear. Then he tells her all about the bowling balls, the prostitutes.
Oh, yeah.
And again, I'm always just watching Kim's face. What did you think her reaction was going to be to all this?
I don't want to toot my own horn, but it was exactly what I expected. The laughing right in Howard's face. I mean, given the way that after everything that just happened with Jimmy and how even though he basically put their lives in danger, she was really not taking it all that seriously. She was willing to still go to work and all of that. I didn't think she would have a problem with hearing this.
That's right. Howard has no idea. He's telling her about how Saul threw a few bowling balls, and she's like, Saul just got a cartel boss to threaten my life.
Yeah.
A few bowling balls isn't a big deal. After Kim laughs, Howard tells her no person in their right mind would behave the way Jimmy does. He's not in control of himself. And Kim, it makes no sense what you're doing. Dropping Mesa Verde, I've got to think Jimmy had something to do with that. That is the worst thing Howard could have said to her, because Kim does not want to be accused of doing something at someone else's behest. She says, do you have any idea how insulting that is? I make my own decisions for my own reasons. I know, Jimmy, and you're wrong. And then Howard has one of the best lines of the season, one of the hardest hitting lines. Adam.
You know who really knew Jimmy? Chuck.
Ooh, low blow.
Yeah.
Now, a lot to dig into in this scene. First off, what do you think Howard's motivation is in this scene? Kim later says it was all about him. It wasn't really about me. What do you read into it?
I think it's a little of both, right? Like Howard, he did get kind of screwed over a bit with the car and with his reputation being threatened like that at the restaurant. But at the same time, he's known Kim for a long time. He's seen her turn in from I think she started off as like a paralegal or something and grow into this attorney. They're friends in a way. And I think he kind of did the right thing by saying something.
I think he really actually does care about both Kim and Saul.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel bad. He said that Saul needs help.
Right.
And I think he truly believes in. I said it because he truly actually does want Saul to get help.
And he's right.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's a mix. I mean, to take the other side of it, probably some of it is for himself. He's harboring the fact that Saul has pulled these awful juvenile attacks on him, and there's really nobody he can talk to about it. Maybe the, what's the name of the Cliff? Cliff might sympathize. But I think part of this is he wants the validation of telling somebody Jimmy is insane. He's doing insane things. But on the other hand, I do think he genuinely cares for at least Kim. Yeah. He might care a little bit less for Saul now than he did earlier. Now, I think Kim, like I said, is deeply insulted by the insinuation that she's making these major life decisions because of Saul. But do you think there's any truth to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. It's a little bit of both, right? Kim clearly had something inside her that wants to do bad things, right? Wants to trick people, is okay taking advantage of certain people. But Saul, of course, fans the flames.
Right.
But you can't fan the flames if there isn't something already there.
True.
Right?
Seeing some interesting comments in the chat. Nick Leo said that the first time I saw that storeroom scene, you know, the one with Kim,
right?
He says, I hallucinated the music that played when she first saw all the pink and blue architectural, I'm not sure that word, maquettes.
Maquettes.
It was an odd contrast. And then I think the rest of the message gets cut off. But I had the same exact feeling. It reminded me of the previous season when, I think it was previous season when Kim walked into that room with Mesa Verde, and it had all these like sculptures or artistic things, and it had this kind of holy sounding music in the background. And I think the parallel, I think, is intentional. It's she first went into that situation and thought maybe this is the thing that's going to give me meaning, or this is the culmination of everything I've been working for. Now it's the same thing, and yet it's happening in this very lowly, dimly lit, unpleasant room.
Right. Yeah, it's here's the thing that might make me happy, Mesa Verde, but it won't. here's the thing that may actually make me happy: the storeroom, the cases of people that need help. We cut to a great scene of Jimmy banging on Mike's door, trying to get his attention. Finally, we see, and they do a great shot where you can see Mike is behind him. And Mike brings Jimmy reluctantly into his home. Jimmy basically begs to know what's going on.
How great would it be if when Mike didn't answer the door, right? He was at his car.
Mm-hmm.
But if Mike answered the door like in his boxers the same way Jimmy would.
Come on in, Jimmy.
Yeah.
And by the way, MM27 in the chat says, hey, MM27, thanks for coming back. Good to see you again. Jimmy begs Mike to tell him what is going on with Lalo, what's the next move, and Mike doesn't relent until Saul shows a little bit of emotion, starts to cry almost, and says, if anything happens to her, I can't do this. Mike relents, and he says this man, a.k.a. Lalo, has other things on his mind. He's going to die tonight. Now, funny parallel, last season, Saul got what he wanted also by turning on the waterworks a little bit. The way that he convinced the whole courtroom that he was somebody that should get his law license back, he had to kind of show some emotion, show that he was affected by Chuck. Here, he's doing the same thing, and in the moment, I wondered if those tears were real, genuine concern for Kim, or was he using that to manipulate Mike?
In the moment, I believed it. But as you were describing the scene, I thought, you could easily have just kind of turned that on.
Now, I think, though, I don't think it's mutually exclusive. Mm-hmm. Because even going back to the courtroom scene, I don't remember how I read it initially, but looking back on it, I believe that Jimmy truly had some of those emotions, but he has the control to say, am I going to turn it on? Am I going to show them? And I think the same thing is happening here. Yeah. Amber T in the chat says, no way, real. And I agree with that.
Yeah.
Regardless of my interpretation of the scene, I think Jimmy's concern for Kim in that scene was real. The only thing I question is, did he choose to show it a little bit more? Was it truly a lack of control that he was showing it to Mike?
Well, he doesn't know very much about Mike. I don't think he knows that Mike is a family man or that this is the kind of thing that would pull on his heartstrings. Mm-hmm. So it very well could have just been his real desperation.
Yeah. No, I think that's totally valid. It was just the coincidence of last season's finale and this one that made me start to question that. Lapcat in the chat says Kim will definitely break bad before this is all over. It was funny. Peter Gould, in an interview after the finale, he made reference to Kim potentially breaking bad, and he was like, "I wish there was a better word for that," but but I don't know how else to say it.
Did you ever hear the phrase break bad before the show Breaking Bad?
Never.
Yeah.
I think it's a saying from where Vince Gilligan grew up, and I forget the exact story, but he said that he didn't, it was something like he didn't realize it wasn't a saying most people knew. He thought it might even be too on the nose or too obvious, but I think most of us never heard it until the show came out, so it worked pretty well. I also never heard the phrase Better Call Saul.
Yeah. Good point.
Kim comes home to find Jimmy in bed, and he's just told her that we're safe, everything's fine. She wants to know how. He assures her, my guy told me, and when Mike tells you something, you can pretty much believe it. I think that's true. And this is where we see that Kim was taking the threat seriously, because her relief when she finds out that they're safe seems to be very genuine.
Definitely.
She sits down, she's relaxed, but Saul has something else on his face, right? He looks pretty shaken.
Yeah.
And he says, Kim, it's been a rough ride. Well, going back a second, actually, Kim says, so it's over. And then Saul says, this time. Kim says there's not going to be a next time. and this is more where I think she's sort of lying to herself. And then Saul says, Kim, it's been a tough ride. We should check out and go home. And this is an important moment because you and I both misheard that line.
Yeah, and I'm betting a lot of other people did too.
Right, we both heard Saul say, Kim, maybe you should check out and go home. We both thought this was Saul essentially attempting to break up with her.
Yeah. He even said, he prefaced that with saying it's been a rough ride. I thought he was talking about the whole relationship.
Right, and he was clearly insinuating that it's over this time, but I am going to do something like this again. Yeah. You're going to be in danger again. So we misheard the line, but I don't think we misread the room. He has on his mind that he needs to end this relationship. At the beginning of the episode, he said, "I'm bad for you."
Yeah.
But Kim tries to save things. She tries to lighten the mood. She opens up the room service menu and just starts to order food. "I'm hungry. We already paid for the night. Let's stay here." So Jimmy and Kim eat dinner. They discuss Howard.
How
Kim-
badly did you want a burger?
Oh,
watching that
man.
scene?
Yeah, anytime I'm at a hotel I haven't been at before and it's sort of a cheap meal situation,
Mhm.
always order a cheeseburger.
For sure.
Even though you know it's not going to be good. The hotel
Yeah,
room service
They
cheeseburger.
usually taste kind of charred.
Yeah, exactly. MM27 says in the chat, "I thought Jimmy was breaking up with Kim too for her own good." Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
that is the valid interpretation of that scene. Jimmy and Kim eating dinner, talking about Howard, talking about the bowling balls, etc. This is where Kim talks about the fact that Howard confronted her, and she says that it's all about him. He needs to be taken down a peg, she says. And this is where they start to joke about how they can get back at Howard.
Doesn't it almost, when she's giving this monologue here, she's saying he needs to be taken down a peg. Did she sound totally genuine, or did she sound like she's trying to like fill a certain role for Jimmy's own amusement?
It kind of felt to me like she's committed to this new lifestyle and she's kind of forcing it a little bit.
Right.
But I think she likes it though.
Yeah, I agree. I think she's almost trying to fit in. She's like, "Oh, okay, I see what we're doing now." But I also think she's doing it because she likes it.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So, jumping ahead a little bit, we know that this ends with her saying, "Let's totally screw over Howard."
Yeah.
At what point did she have that idea? Was it something she came up with in the midst of them joking about all this?
I bet it was early. I bet once she heard that Saul was doing these things, she was like, "This is great."
Yeah. Well, you could. It kind of felt to me like her personality completely changed. Like before this episode, you got glimpses, but it feels like she just completely committed herself to it here.
Yeah, I agree. She's going all in now.
Well, if she thought of this in advance, if she had this idea before this conversation, then if you detected any lack of, or if you detected that it wasn't totally genuine when she says that Howard needs to be taken down a peg, that might have been her sort of trying to manipulate the conversation to get it to, "Hey, Saul, I have an idea.
Yeah.
Let's screw over Howard so we can get the Sandpiper deal to settle."
I like that interpretation. She's really smart, so I think it's very likely she kind of pieced this all together, figured it out in advance.
And Nick Leo in the chat says, "Her Sandpiper plan, did you always know Kim hated Howard so much?" We have seen Kim confront Howard before over the way he treats Jimmy, right?
Yeah.
So we haven't seen it in a while, but I do think she's harbored some resentment towards Howard.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to his treatment of Jimmy.
Right.
So the fact that their little reunion here is all about him giving Jimmy a hard time, I think is going to just reactivate the "I hate Howard" part of her brain.
Right, and MM27 hits on that too in the chat. He says, "I think when Howard tried to tell her about Jimmy's bad behavior, she was turned." Which, I agree. I think that was the last straw for her. I think that's what set her off.
Yeah, absolutely. So they joke around. This leads into a very romantic scene. The two of them sleeping together. And then we get under the covers, Kim talking to him about what if Howard does something horrible. Jimmy tries to joke, like murders a waiter. She says, "No, I mean like really bad. Misconduct. We can tank him in his Sandpiper suit." Basically saying we do something that sets Howard up to look like he really screwed up. Misconduct. People aren't going to want to work with him. It tanks his firm. They're going to need whatever money they can get. Therefore, we need to settle the Sandpiper case. A case that's been pending for a while. If it settles, Jimmy was one of the lawyers in the case. He gets roughly $2 million. This is also a case, we admitted this on the Instant Take, but why not bring it up again? Tons of people were predicting this Sandpiper case was going to play a role somehow in the finale or soon. We kept thinking, nah, no way, and it turned out to be pretty pivotal.
Yeah.
So, really interesting. I guess a few questions here. What happened to Kim? I mean, was it the Kim we saw last season? Would she be willing to take Howard, destroy his career, in order to make $2 million? Or did she change this season?
I think she changed this season. I think the main thrust of her storyline this season, and we kept talking about it every episode, is she pushes things a little bit further than we've seen her do it, or she tolerates something that Saul has done beyond what we would have expected, and she becomes a little bit more and more okay with these kinds of things.
And Lapcat20 says, did you think Kim's gone to the dark side because of Jimmy? And to some extent, yes, but you make your own choices. I think this whole show, Breaking Bad, all of this has been about choices. So MM27 says, Kim has always been a bit edgy. I think this is exactly right.
And Amber T says, hold up, it's a pattern. She gets upset when people question her judgment. Read Jimmy, because it's them questioning her. So again, it's the idea of she believes she's making her own choices, and when people act as though she doesn't have autonomy, it makes her want to act even worse.
Right. And you can point to when they hatched their plot to screw over Kevin. It was partially Jimmy leading her on. You know, Kim, there is another way to go about this. But Kim made the choice to move forward with that. Kim made the choice to help Jimmy hatch the plot that would get Kevin. So, sure, Jimmy was a variable, but ultimately it's something inside her. If it wasn't Jimmy that brought her to the dark side, it could have easily been something else.
Yeah.
I think the two of them feed off each other. Neither of them are good for the other.
I think if she wasn't brought to this kind of dark side by Jimmy, she could have been brought to a different dark side by other lawyers, right? She could have been that cutthroat lawyer who goes after someone like Mr. Acker.
Right. And I said earlier in the video that I think one of Kim's big character flaws is lying to herself.
Yeah. Right?
Lying to herself to believe Jimmy when he says this is not going to happen again. Another example of that is, what does she want to do with this $2 million? She wants to screw over Howard, get $2 million, and then use that to open up a practice where she can give regular people on her pro bono cases the kind of representation that usually only millionaires get. So this is the lie. The lie is that I can go over here, do something awful, and then go over here and do something great. It's kind of like what Mr. Acker accused her of, right?
Yeah, actually it's exactly what, except I don't think she's doing it to justify the crime of wrecking Howard's career. I think she thinks she wants to do both. She both wants to wreck his career and help these people. I don't know if she sees it as, in order to wreck his career, I can offset that with some good deeds.
Right. I don't think she's trying to balance the moral scales. Yeah. And that's, you and I were also talking before this. I asked you, does Kim think about morality? What is her morality? And I think it just comes down to, she wants to help people that need help. And whatever it takes to get there is justified to some extent. And so I think she's, and to me, I coach that as sort of lying to yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
But another way you could look at it is she's like a Robin Hood, right? That's a nicer way to pitch it.
Stealing from Howard to give to Mr. Acker.
Yeah.
The Mr. Ackers of the world. So, a couple of hours before work, Jimmy and Kim have been up all night. They're making ice cream, and there was one little detail I picked up on afterwards, but Jimmy tells Kim he doesn't want the mint chip ice cream.
Oh, that's the one he dropped on the ground.
Right, and he saw it swarming with ants.
Yeah.
So I think he's grossed out by mint chip ice cream. He doesn't want that. So they talk about what would you do with the $2 million. Kim tells him that she would get a crappy office, open up the pro bono practice, help people the way that typically only millionaires get representation. Then Jimmy says, we're not really going to do this, right? I know you. I know in the cold light of day, you wouldn't be okay with this. And then Adam, what does Kim do? That's right.
Okay.
You know,
I was worried I went too early with that.
Well, she says, wouldn't I? I'm going to take a shower so I don't have to in the morning. Jimmy says, shitting me, right? And then Kim does the pistols.
Yeah.
Which is a callback to season 4, right?
Right. That's when Saul dove into the proverbial pool of bad breaking, right?
Yeah.
He goes, it's all good, man. And he gives her the finger guns. And she looked totally baffled when he did that, and now it's the exact reverse.
Right. Saul's baffled, so it's her saying, you surprised me? well, it looks like I've got a few tricks up my sleeve too. Pew pew.
Pew pew.
Exactly.
She outsold Saul.
Right. And this show does a great job of using characters to reveal something about other characters. We've talked a couple of times about how Mike sort of became a supporting character in the desert. We didn't really learn a lot about Mike in the desert, but we used Mike to learn about Saul. And in this scene, and in a lot of cases this season, Saul sort of became a supporting character in the Kim show. This scene, Saul is there really as a way for us to learn about Kim. And I just find that to be masterfully done in this show, in a way that it's not done in a lot of other shows. So that is the end of Jimmy and Kim in season 5. Any other thoughts on their storyline in this episode or in this season?
Well, we keep reflecting on this, but it has really hit me pretty hard how interested I've become in Kim's story. Like, for the first seasons, she was an interesting character to have, kind of a person that Saul could, or Jimmy could bounce his thoughts off of. She was like his confidant he could come to when he was stressed out, and they would go smoke in the parking garage.
Yeah, I mean, she's become a contender for a spinoff that we would want to see. Like,
yeah.
That says something.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's so incredible. We keep kind of joking about which character would you like to see spun off into their own show. Virtually every character that's been introduced in Better Call Saul, I would watch a show about them.
I would watch a Lalo spinoff, a Gus spinoff, a Kim spinoff,
and Mr. X Sobchak spinoff.
Yeah, a Huel spinoff.
You know I love that guy. MM27 says Mike.
Oh, definitely.
I always love when people say a Mike spinoff because this show is 50% Mike spinoff.
Yeah.
But
you could always spin him
Mike,
further, though.
Yeah, exactly. Young Mike on the Force, I would watch that. So let's jump over to Gus and company and talk
Buckle
about
your
them.
seatbelts, people.
Exactly. So I love how this show can just sort of mix genres. On the Jimmy Kim side, you have this deep character drama where it's a morality tale. Then you jump over to just a non-stop thrill ride.
Oh, yeah.
And they set up the tension right at the introduction of their storyline this episode. We see Gus and Mike at the burned down Pollos Hermanos. And pretty early in the conversation, Gus asks if Nacho knows about the assassination. And then we say, oh crap, Lalo's going to be assassinated tonight. Nacho's going to be caught in the crossfire. Mike again advocates for him. He wants to pull Nacho out of it. And Gus, of course, doesn't want to.
Yeah.
But he says, maybe we can use the situation. My men are great, but don't have a man on the inside. Now, we can question how great his men are.
Yeah.
But we will get to that.
Mike's a big old softy, right?
He really is. And I've been wondering what further character development are we going to get from Mike this series. And some of it might be hardening some of those soft edges, right? He learned it already with Werner, but here he's again trying to advocate for Nacho. If he was just looking out for himself, he wouldn't bring up Nacho again in that regard.
Right,
Gus
he
clearly
gains
doesn't
nothing
like
from that. Except that he has to work with Nacho sometimes, and maybe he's just sick of hearing about, poor old Nacho.
I'm sick of hearing about his dad. Lapcat20 says her transformation would lead to an entertaining season 6. And yes, Kim has become... I never thought at the start of this series that going into the final season, I would be more invested in what's going to happen to this Kim character I've never heard of than what's going to happen to Saul Goodman. MM27 says, or soften the harder edges. I mean, I don't think so. I feel like Mike is, if anything, he's learning that he's too emotional. He hands out his fatherly advice like candy. He keeps becoming father figures to people. Nacho, Saul, he's got to stop doing that. Though we know he does it again with Jesse.
True. But he also I think our first introduction to him is he's the guy who comes in to help cover up Jane's overdose, right?
That's right. Yeah,
and I mean he doesn't shed a tear or show a single ounce of emotion during that. He's all business.
Right. MM27 says, but it's a prequel, and I'm not sure which comment that was in response to, but that's sort of what we're getting at with Mike. I do think he seems more hardened in Breaking Bad, and learning this lesson is part of what's going to get him there.
Right, and that's why we did have that theory last episode that perhaps Mike is going to have to kill Nacho, right?
Right.
I don't think it's inevitable, but let's say Mike does have to do it. I don't think there's any coming back from that for Mike. I think it's basically going to totally darken his soul.
That's right. And there's a great call in the chat here. MVP Farms Admin says Lalo is Ace Ventura meets Scarface. That is a great call.
Yeah, down to the shirts and everything.
We also have another person in the chat who says maybe if she doesn't die, they could do something on what she did or how she lived and what happened to her during the Breaking Bad timeline. I am so curious next season how they're going to handle the crossover between Jimmy McGill timeline into the Gene timeline. You've got to think we're going to see some of Breaking Bad. And if Kim survives into that, man, I would just love that. Yeah. I would love if they were to somehow intercut Breaking Bad footage with newly shot footage, and we see this, that we recontextualize the Saul that we know from Breaking Bad to see what was going on behind the scenes.
That would be so cool. And I think with this, the Breaking Bad Better Call Saul universe is in a way its own world. It's very similar to our world, but we've almost referred to this as like a hyper real world where coincidences and consequences happen all the time, and they're actually more magnified, right?
Yeah.
Than they are in real life. There are no loose ends in this world, and you could really explore any number of stories, even characters we've never seen before. There's no limit to how many spin-offs there could be. Now, I don't think there's going to be endless spin-offs. I'd be surprised if there were any more shows taking place in this world, but there's so much you could do here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's no better example of that than what we see from Lalo this episode. This whole world, this whole window we get into the criminal world that Lalo deals in. Don Eladio, I don't know if we've seen this side of him before, but man, he is such a character. The whole Frunk sequence.
Oh, yeah.
I would love to spend...
front trunk.
Exactly. I'd love to spend more time in that world.
It's just like a French dressing combined with ranch.
That's right. So we've seen... They're going back to the French well.
Yeah.
We've seen this joke before.
But what we've seen are little glimpses into Don Eladio, that he likes receiving gifts. He's kind of eccentric. He appreciates the finer things in life.
Yeah.
And
MM27 says Don Eladio is over the top. Maybe he is, but I think Lalo just got us used to that sort of a personality, so it worked for me.
Yeah.
Anyway, we see an SUV show up to this barbed wire environment. This is basically one of Lalo's homes, I guess, or one of the Salamanca homes. And there's a tense moment where there's a guy holding a machine gun. SUV shows up. The window lowers, and you see Lalo with a big smile on his face, which I absolutely loved. Lalo introduces Nacho to everybody there, all of his friends. This guy's a great cook. She grows the best tomatoes. And you, kid, what, am I going to have to carry my own bags in or what? So you never know what to expect from Lalo. And really, all I can say about these scenes is Lalo, as always, such a joy, so much fun, so unlike the other Salamancas. And, man, Nacho looks nervous.
Oh, yeah.
And he is really good at looking nervous.
That's kind of all he's done this whole season.
And it's hard to complain about that because what else is he going to do?
Right.
So Nacho and Lalo are working on a car together. You can see Lalo gets a call, I think. Yeah, he gets a call. So he excuses himself, goes to the bathroom, and basically gets an order. Open the back gate at 3 a.m., then get the hell away. So basically, open the back gate so we can get in and assassinate Lalo. We get a quick reminder here that Nacho's got a big heart. He says, you're going to do this clean, right? Innocent people here. Got to protect everybody. So I start to get worried at that point that maybe Nacho's going to die this episode because they're really making us care for him. Of course, he doesn't, but they just ramp up the tension.
Now, is Nacho just naive, or is this wishful thinking on his part? Like, maybe I can just let them know, hey, there's like a lot of innocent people here.
Mostly wishful thinking.
Yeah.
I would say 98% wishful thinking. I've got to at least try.
Yeah.
And by the way, right before that, Lalo tells Nacho he's going to be meeting with Don Eladio. And at the end of that conversation, if he likes you, you're getting a promotion. Nacho asks him if he doesn't like me. Lalo says, you'll be fine.
It almost made me think of like someone who's like friends are trying to give him a pep talk before he asks the girl to the prom. What if she doesn't like me?
I can't relate to that at all.
Because everyone likes him.
MVP Farms admin says, Deadpool, Nacho or Lalo, who dies first?
I have my gut says they both live, but I think not. If I had to gun to my head, I'd say Nacho.
I would say either they both live or they both die in a standoff sort of situation where they kill each other.
I can see that, yeah.
Cut to Don Eladio's pool. This pool is bad news.
Yes.
Right? This is where Don Eladio, or actually Hector's the one who pulled the trigger, I think, kills Gus's partner, Max. So one of the worst villains in history was born at this pool. So we know something bad's going to go down. MM27 in the chat says, good night. It's been lovely. Good night, MM27. Thanks for stopping by. Someone's got to take that bell away from me. I love having it here. So Juan says that Gustavo assures me the bad luck is over. Lalo sort of plays into it. He points to the money that Gus brought in and says, yeah, it looks good. Yeah. Don Eladio says, does it? And I was like, yeah, it's good.
For an amateur.
And then Lalo does a great job of sort of sucking up to Don Eladio. This is where he gives him the car.
Yeah.
This is where we have the great Frunk scene.
If I were there in person, I would have gotten uncomfortable watching Don Eladio receive the car. I would have been like, you two get a room.
This is also where Lalo introduces Nacho to Don Eladio. There's a great moment here where he's introduced as Tuco's friend.
Yeah.
And you get the, you okay in there from Don Eladio poking at Nacho's forehead.
I love this just goes to show, like, the cartel has some problems. Like, they know Tuco's unstable, unreliable. Tuco, he's loco, right?
Right.
And, it's kind of just a joke.
Yeah. CJ in the chat says, Nacho must be how Saul learns about the vacuum cleaner repair guy. Nacho either must die or disappear. No way he gets away easy.
Maybe I think that's very likely. I think that's quite likely. I think it would be cool to learn how Saul first discovers the vacuum guy. Mm-hmm. I also think it's possible that Nacho gets the hookup for the vacuum guy, but only is able to save his dad, not himself. It would kind of add to the tragic aspect of his character, but it would be a little redemption.
It would also feel the Nacho Jesse parallels are almost at a point where it's so on the nose. Mm-hmm. It's this really sympathetic character in over his head. Things just get worse and worse and worse for them. If we get an El Camino ending for Nacho, that would feel a little bit, I don't know, just repetitive. Yeah. But I agree with CJ. It's hard for me to see it going any other way besides Nacho dies or they call Ed and Nacho disappears. I wonder, actually, just thinking out loud, Mike talks to Gus about disappearing Nacho. Maybe somehow he finally gets Gus to come around to helping Nacho get away. Could Gus be the one who knows about the vacuum guy?
Maybe.
It's a possibility. Yeah. We'll see. So we get to the Don, Eladio, and Nacho conversation. Eladio basically asks Nacho, how are you going to make money? Nacho explains his whole plan about going after bikers. He says that all the biker gangs are divided. We turn them against each other, take them out one by one, get more territory. Don Eladio says, so you're a businessman, but what do you want? Nacho says, respect. I want to go my own way, do my own thing. I don't want to look over my shoulder and worry if someone is playing me. And Don Eladio says, you're in the wrong business, my friend.
I had the exact same thought.
And I think, to me, everything we're seeing of Nacho this episode is just cranking up the tragedy of the Nacho character. First, they remind us of his heart when he says, you're going to do this clean, right? Then here they remind us of his brains. He's a businessman. He could have made something of himself. But he ended up at Don Eladio's pool instead.
Yeah. Amber T says, by the way, enough with Ed. He can't have that much involvement. I think you and I agree with that. Yeah, it feels a little bit like a cop-out.
It's tough because I don't want to overuse the Ed character, but at the same time, once that plot device has been introduced, it's sort of like when a show introduces the idea of resurrecting a dead character. It just ruins the idea of death at that point. And here, it's kind of like anytime a character's in a bind, you've got to think, well, it would be unrealistic if they didn't call Ed. So it's a tough line to balance there. Anyway, we get to the scene that this whole episode was building up to. Nacho at 3 a.m.
Amazing scene.
First thing I noticed is Nacho is really sweaty.
Yeah. Like he looks like whatever he says, you should not believe it.
Tech guy, CR in the chat says, please raise up the volume. Maybe bump up our volume slightly.
Thank you.
I wanted to get the bell in one more time before it got too loud for it. We see Nacho cutting tinfoil. By the way, when you saw him doing that, did you have any idea what he was doing with that tinfoil?
Not when I saw him cutting it. Once I saw him at the lock, I knew what it was.
Wow, you were able to piece it together.
Yeah.
So Nacho goes outside. He's going to open up the gate at 3 a.m., but he sees Lalo sitting there by the fire.
Yeah.
We have a great conversation between Nacho and Lalo. We learned that Lalo only sleeps for an hour or two every night.
Yeah, and he's like, and for me, that's enough.
Which I found...
That's impossible.
I just loved learning that little tidbit about his character.
Yeah, you know, and it could explain some things, because it might suggest that he actually has, like, a psychiatric, like, condition. He could be manic.
And is it possible that he's using some chemical enhancement to keep himself so chipper when he's probably very tired?
Yeah, for sure.
So how does Nacho get rid of Lalo so he can open up the gate? Nacho goes inside, puts a bunch of oil in a pan, lights a fire, then goes back outside, tries to remain calm until Lalo notices smoke coming from inside. So Lalo is not one to allow his house to burn down. So he runs inside to check in on it. Nacho puts his tinfoil to work, cracks open the lock, walks out. And that's the last we see of Nacho this episode. So Nacho's home free. Thank God.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's all good now.
We know at least Nacho's alive for another year and a half or so until the next season starts.
Right.
Schrodinger's Nacho. Until we see the episode, he's still alive.
Maybe I just shouldn't watch next season just to make sure that for me, he's always alive.
There you go. So we don't have to go through every beat of this amazing scene, but Gus's men show up with machine guns.
That was so cool. First of all, they make the guys look like elite assassins, right?
Right.
They have the look of like paramilitary people that these are the kinds of people Gus hires.
Right. They look like a SWAT team.
Yeah.
They come in, and Lalo ultimately gets the better of them using his bathtub crawl. What would you call it?
Escape latch, crawl space.
Crawl tunnel?
Yeah.
He opens up the bathtub. There's a tunnel underneath. He crawls out, and just an incredible scene. We know that he can jump, and here we learn that he can crawl as fast as a tiger.
He's got vertical and horizontal movement nailed down.
Just amazing. He was basically it was like a slasher movie. He was a monster in this scene.
Except he was being hunted.
Yeah.
But he quickly turned the tables.
And we talked about this in the instant take, but so incredible that we are so worried for Nacho. We don't want Lalo to kill Nacho. Lalo's the villain. Cut to, all of a sudden, we're rooting for Lalo to get away. Then we were reminded in the chat of some of Lalo's evil deeds.
Oh, yeah.
Him and Hector laughing about the hotel they burned down.
Right, with people still inside.
Yeah, so we can't really root for Lalo, but viscerally in this scene, you're just watching this guy get the better of all these people trying to kill him. It's hard not to just root for somebody so competent.
You love an underdog, right? And here he seemed like the underdog. First of all, his closest associate right now is betraying him, right?
Right.
In his very own home. Now, I support Nacho. I think he did the right thing. But also, once we knew Nacho was out of there, he felt safe. It was much easier to then start sympathizing with Lalo.
Right.
It was incredible. For the fact that it's an action sequence, the writing was incredible because I think it caused just the right emotional reactions in us.
It did, and just a few great moments to call out. So he escapes through his tunnel, then comes back, so he's able to sort of get behind the team, flank them, if you will, starts killing everybody, Great moment where the guys are in the tunnel going after Lalo,
Oh yeah.
and he sticks his head in upside down, and then sticks his machine gun in and just kills them all.
Yeah.
So incredible scene.
And he really took his sweet time too. He like looks down. He's like, oh, that's convenient.
it was like it felt a little bit Looney Tunes.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like Spider-Man. Like, you know, Spider-Man, he's a superhero, but it's got this cartoonish vibe to it.
Yeah.
It really felt like that, but they pulled it off in a way that was believable, and it didn't take me out of the moment at all.
Yeah, and a couple comments in the chat. Sabistien says, if they were the best in the business, I can't even imagine the Benny Hill shenanigans his B or C team would have generated.
Mm-hmm.
And a number of people pointed out how Gus's professionals here don't seem to be that great. Now, in the moment, I didn't really pick up on that. To me, this is Lalo's home turf.
Yeah.
We also know Lalo is good at what he does. It's night, it's dark, he has an advantage. But rewatching it, there is at least one moment where a guy shoots at nothing for a good 30 seconds.
Is that when he had the oil splashed in his face?
Yes, and you can accept that because the guy's disoriented, but there's another guy who comes in after that and starts shooting at Lalo while he crawls away. Lalo's 30 feet away, and you hear the guy still shooting. So I don't think it was the intent in story that they were unprofessional. I think this was just a little bit of funkiness in the choreography.
True. I also, Drew Leonard in the chat says Lalo was just that good that they may have been really good assassins, but he's luckier than them and smarter. I agree with that. I think there's something to his character that does seem like some natural luck that's following him around, and it kind of adds to his mystique.
It's almost the way that Jesse called out Waltz for having similar luck when he was talking to Hank. He can't keep getting away with this.
Yeah.
He's like the devil. No matter what you do, somehow he's going to win. Lalo's got a little bit of that luck on his side, too.
Lalo's like La Cucaracha, right?
Yeah. CJ says a couple things. I thought Lalo was too cartoonish and corny when he was first introduced, but he's become one of my favorite characters. I agree with all of that except for the beginning part. He was one of my favorite characters from the moment.
I thought he was very cartoonish and corny, but I didn't mind.
And he also adds, I think they were shooting the other people in the house, not necessarily shooting at nothing. And I think that's 100% right, actually, because we do find that basically everybody in the house is dead afterwards. So that it does lend a little bit more credence to these guys were professionals. Lalo was just that good. He had the advantage, too, of knowing the layout of the home.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the end of the episode, Lalo looks menacingly at the two glasses that he and Nacho were drinking from earlier. So he, I'm assuming, pieces together here that Nacho had some involvement in this plot.
Definitely, yeah.
And then one of the greatest Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad moments ever, I think.
Yeah.
At least from a score perspective. Lalo starts to walk off the camera angrily, very angrily. I don't think I've ever seen Lalo this angry before. You hear the sound of his footsteps on the gravel. And the sound of that gravel sort of echoes and echoes, becomes more and more distorted, and essentially turns into thunder crackle almost. Yeah. And it's the dun dun dun. Lalo is mad. He's angry. He's coming after Nacho or Gus or coming after everybody, it feels like. It
literally sounded like boiling blood.
It did, right? And we said he was a monster. He was slasher flick monster in this episode, and this turned that up to another level. He is a mythical beast coming after all the characters we love.
Yeah, and in the medical world, sometimes after surgery or in other situations, we'll use this thing called a Doppler as a way of detecting blood flow in people's limbs. And so you'll put it over like an artery further down in the hand or in the leg, and you listen for blood flow. And if you have good blood flow, it sounds like the noise you hear when Lalo is thundering out of there. It's that, you know, and it's like that's where the boiling blood and fury just hits you so hard.
MVP Farms admin in the chat says Lalo is Thunder God.
He shoots lightning bolts from his fingertips.
And Lapcat says Lalo has been one of the surprising highlights of season 5. I mean, for me, he was one of the characters I was most looking forward to this season.
I would say Lalo and Kim were the MVPs of this season.
Yeah, really incredible. Again, just the fact that we've got this prequel show centered on Saul and Mike. But at the moment, the characters we're most intrigued by, Lalo, Nacho, Kim. Probably Nacho is the one that I have the most sympathy for.
Mhm.
Not as much intrigued by him, more worried for him.
Yeah.
But man, they did such an amazing job here.
And Labcat20, I was chuckling at your comment for a while before because you said should have gotten the 2 best hitmen this side of the Mississippi, which was a great Breaking Bad reference. Yeah, Gus totally should have sent Badger and Skinny Pete after him with their laser pointers.
Well, any other thoughts on the Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul season 5 finale?
What are the odds we're going to see the show come back in only a year?
Well, we know that Vince Gilligan is in the writer's room, the virtual writer's room right now. They're working on season 6 over Zoom. And the plan, at least at the moment, is to aim for a fall 2021 release.
I really hope they can pull it off.
Yeah, I mean, part of me honestly hopes that it gets delayed further because I just want to put off this show ending as long as possible. Because on the one hand, I'm glad they're ending on their own terms. They're bringing the show to a proper conclusion. But on the other hand, I am just not ready for the show to end. I'm not ready to leave the Breaking Bad universe.
Yeah, me neither.
I mean, at the end of Breaking Bad, we had Better Call Saul to look forward to, and we could comfort ourselves with that. But after this, what's left in the world?
Why even go on?
The Game of Thrones prequel.
Okay, fair. I hope it doesn't suck. What did we find out about Better Call Saul before Breaking Bad ended, or was it? Okay,
we did. I'm 90% sure we did. And in the chat, by the way, if you could spell your name for us phonetically, I'd love to shout you out. But the real question is, what are the odds that there will be something after next season? So we've talked about this so many times. What are the odds that we revisit the Breaking Bad universe after Better Call Saul?
Yeah, I don't see a reason not to. Like, the writers are so good, and they do such a good job casting all these actors and putting these plots together that if the creative people behind this want to keep going, they'll find ways to do it. And the demand is there. It's
such a rich world. And by the way, the person who asked about the odds of something coming after next season is Sato. So I think it's very unlikely that we get something shortly after Better Call Saul ends. The writers, Vince Gilligan, have said they're ready to leave this universe. They want to do something new. But it's hard for me to imagine they're going to stay away from it forever. We saw Vince Gilligan come back for El Camino. We know that wasn't part of the original plan. But it's such a rich world. There's so much to explore. Down the road, if they think of an idea, if something comes to mind, I think they'll come back to it. If I were a betting man, so Sato says 50%, 80%, what is the percentage? For me, if you say within the next 10 years, will we revisit this universe? I say 90%.
Wow.
I just think it's too... I mean, Vince Gilligan has spent over a decade in this world. I just don't think he'll be able to walk away from it and never come back.
Yeah, I lean that way too. 90% seems high, but I want to believe.
Yeah. Well, I want to believe. Great X-Files reference. Vince Gilligan worked on that show.
That was on purpose.
So I'll say this. I want it to come back. I really hope it does. MVP Farms admin says El Camino 2, Gene and Kim. I'm hoping for Gene and Kim in Better Call Saul.
Gene and Kim forever.
There you go.
Saul and Kim, then Gene and Kim, but no gaps there. That would be great.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess to wrap it up, I mean, I freaking loved season 5 of Better Call Saul. This has been an incredible season. It's a slow burn. They slowly build the tension, but it wasn't let's build up the tension and then a massive release in the finale. It was let's build up the tension and then 3 whopper episodes where it feels like the release in Bagman. Then you go to the next episode and you realize, whoa, things can get worse. Then you get to something unforgivable and they go to a whole other level.
You and I have loved the show since day one, and I can't think of any show that has managed to start off so good and actually get better and better all the way through season 5.
Sebastian in the chat says they keep getting
Sebastian.
better and better.
I think it's a play on Sebastian.
I got it. Sebastian. Two
Yeah.
words. I like it. So, exactly what you just said. Somehow, this show just keeps getting better and better. It's incredible. It builds on itself. They set things up that come back. Just an amazing show. I freaking love this show. I love this episode. And I can't wait for season 6.
Yeah, me neither. But we will have to.
Yeah, exactly. So Sebastian says it is Sebastian indeed. So I think with that, one more thing we have to do, Adam, one more order of business.
That's right.
Is we always love to shout people out who go out of their way to help us out by going into the Apple Podcast app and leaving us a rating or a review in the podcast app. And we've got 2 reviews to shout out this week. Adam, why don't you go ahead and read that first one for us?
All right. First, we have Cole Brown 569 who says, "Great stuff. Excellent podcast, and these guys are clearly going somewhere with this. And I'll tell you where we're going. Good choice road."
Right. Kim's on the bad choice road.
Yeah.
We learn from her mistakes. We're on the good choice road.
That's right. That's where we're going.
And we've got another review here from Cam Doyle who says, "Amazing podcast. Must listen for any Better Call Saul fan." Oh, wait, before I read this. Cole Brown 569. I got news for you. You're an incredible human being. Cam Doyle says, "Amazing podcast. Must listen for any Better Call Saul fan." He says, "Really love listening to this podcast. The reactions and breakdowns are fun and insightful. It feels like I'm sitting down and chatting with my buddies after each episode when I sit down and listen. 10 out of 10 must listen for any Better Call Saul fan." And that is great to hear because that's what our favorite podcasts are, the ones where it feels like you're sitting in a room, you're hanging out with your friends, and that's the vibe we're going for. So it puts a smile on my face to hear that's how it's coming across.
Yeah.
Cam Doyle, Adam's got some news for you.
You're an incredible person.
An incredible human being.
Yes.
Usually what I say.
Okay.
That's okay.
I don't know if there's a difference, but I'll give it to you.
Anyway, with that, I think we can say if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and in Hector Salamanca fashion, hit the bell icon so you get notified the next time we go live. And Better Call Saul is done for the season, but we're not done.
No.
We're going to keep talking about Better Call Saul. We'll do a ranking of all our favorite seasons. Maybe we'll do some of our favorite episodes. We'll talk about the characters. As there's more news about Season 6, we'll talk about that. And if you're only listening to Saulcast and you're not on your YouTube channel, boy, are you missing out. Check out the link in the description and check out our YouTube channel, One Take, where we talk about Better Call Saul, but we also talk about Westworld. We recently talked about Devs. We'll be covering Penny Dreadful, City of Angels. We talk about movies, TV shows. If there's anything you would like us to talk about, I doubt we'll be able to top Better Call Saul, but we're always looking for more shows we can sink our teeth into, more shows that have a community as smart as all of you folks, as smart as Better Call Saul fans. So come over to our YouTube channel, leave a comment, let us know what you'd like us to talk about next. And I think with that, Adam, we can wrap it up.
Let's do it.
I'm Gil.
I'm Adam.
I'm Alun.
And this is Saulcast.